The California sun beat down on the cobblestone streets of Napa Valley, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. My sister Clara was getting married, and I, her older sister and maid of honor, was expected to be a pillar of support. A ridiculous notion. Our lives had always been a silent war, a constant struggle for our parents' approval, a game she always seemed to win. Her life was a perfectly curated gallery, a loving fiancé, a successful career, and now, a fairy tale wedding. My life. A masterpiece of my own making, but one built on a foundation of bitter rivalry. I had feigned excitement, of course, for the cameras, for our parents, for her. But as I watched her glow, a familiar jealousy gnawed at me. She had everything, and I was determined to find a crack in her perfect facade. I found my opportunity when she entrusted me with her maid of honor speech. She, in her naive goodness, believed I would pour my heart into it. I smiled sweetly, took the neatly typed pages from her hand, and promised her the world. Days turned into a week. I was on a business trip in San Francisco, a city I loved for its ability to hide secrets. The real business was not at some tech conference, but in a small cafe, a quiet corner where I sat with her speech. It was sickeningly sentimental, filled with memories of us as children, a testament to a bond that never truly existed. It was a beautiful lie, and I was going to tear it apart. I started to rewrite it, not to make it better, but to make it a weapon. I would reveal her insecurities, her past mistakes, and every flaw I had meticulously observed over the years. I wasn't just rewriting a speech. I was rewriting our story, with me as the victor. I scribbled notes in the margins, my pen scratching angrily against the pristine paper. I felt a surge of power, a heady mix of control and vengeance. The Napa vineyards were a world away, and so was my conscience. This was my moment to finally get what I deserved. Not a share of the spotlight, but the whole stage. I would make sure everyone saw her for what she truly was, or at least what I had convinced myself she was. A fraud. The fog of San Francisco settled over the city, a perfect blanket for my dark intentions. San Francisco's fog rolled in, mirroring the cold calculations in my mind. My business trip was just a clever ruse to give me the space and time to craft my masterpiece of malice. Clara called every evening, her voice bubbling with excitement, asking how the speech was coming along. I'd lie, telling her I was adding heartfelt details, polishing it until it shone. It's going to be perfect, I'd coo, a sweet lie coating the bitter truth. My laptop screen glowed late into the night. I wasn't just rewriting her words. I was meticulously crafting a performance. I would start with her loving, naive draft, then pivot, slowly revealing a different side of her. I'd mention the time she accidentally broke Mom's favorite vase and let me take the blame. The time she forgot to tell me about the scholarship application deadline. Little moments, seemingly insignificant, that had been carefully stored in my memory, waiting for this very moment. I would present them not as cruel acts, but as funny little quirks of her personality, a way to make the audience laugh at her, not with her. The original speech was filled with saccharine memories of us as kids, of playing dress-up and sharing secrets. I replaced them with subtle digs about her being a drama queen, always needing to be the center of attention. The praise for her fiancé was twisted into a backhanded compliment, suggesting he was the only one who could handle her. My heart hammered with a dark excitement. I was so close to making my sister's perfect day. Not so perfect. I rehearsed my lines in front of the mirror, practicing the perfect blend of sisterly affection and sharp-witted sarcasm. I perfected the timing of my pauses, the inflection of my voice, the exact moment to add a little laugh to soften the blow of a cruel jab. I felt like a director, choreographing a scene that would live in infamy. The cold city air of San Francisco seemed to fuel my creativity, the distance from home providing the perfect incubator for my malice. I flew back to Napa a day before the wedding, the revised speech a coiled serpent in my handbag. The vineyard was abuzz with activity, Fairy lights were being strung, flowers arranged, and the scent of freshly cut grass mingled with the sweet perfume of blooming roses. Clara, surrounded by her friends and family, radiated a happiness that felt like a physical blow. She rushed to greet me, her eyes shining. "Oh my God, you're back. Did you finish it?" she asked, her voice laced with hope. I pulled out a pristine, beautifully bound copy of my twisted speech. I had even used a fancy font and a wax seal to make it look special. "It's ready," I said, handing it to her. She took it with reverence, a tear welling in her eye. "Thank you so much. I knew I could count on you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I watched her read the first few paragraphs, the loving, original words I had left untouched. Her smile was genuine, and for a fleeting second, a shard of something I hadn't felt in years, guilt, pricked at me. But it was only a moment. That brief pang was quickly drowned out by the thrill of what was to come. I was the master of this puppet show, and the grand finale was just around the corner. I had meticulously memorized the cruel parts, the subtle jabs that would land with the perfect timing. I would deliver them with a smile, a laugh, a tear, to make them seem all the more authentic. The wedding rehearsal was a blur. My parents praised my beautiful speech, a testament to the lie I had created. Even Leo, Clara's fiancé, complimented my work, saying it sounded like it came from the heart. His trust in me, in all of us, was so complete, it was almost painful. The irony was almost too much to bear. My hands clutched the podium, the smooth wood a stark contrast to the turbulent emotions within me. The wedding day dawned, a flawless blue sky day. The air was thick with the scent of lavender and anticipation. I stood in the bridesmaid's room, my custom-made gown a perfect fit, my face a mask of sisterly affection. Clara was radiant, a vision in white lace. Our mother, her eyes glistening, pulled me aside. "You know, your sister has always looked up to you," she said, squeezing my hand. "She was so excited for your speech. It means the world to her." My heart felt a strange, cold flutter. This wasn't the kind of victory I had imagined. It was supposed to be a conquest, a moment of public humiliation for her. But looking at her, she wasn't the rival I had created in my mind. She was just a girl, my little sister, on the happiest day of her life. Yet, the show must go on. I had invested too much time, too much energy, into this vengeful act to back out now. I had rewritten the story, and I was going to see it through. The ceremony was beautiful, a blur of vows and tears. And then, it was time for the reception, and for me to take the stage. The lights were bright, the crowd hushed. I stepped up to the microphone, a confident smile on my face. I looked at Clara, and a strange wave of emotion, a mixture of triumph and regret, washed over me. I began to speak, the sweet, loving words of the original speech coming out of my mouth. I paused, smiled at the crowd, and then with a mischievous grin I said, "You know, while I was on a trip, I realized something. This speech, it wasn't good enough." The crowd chuckled and Clara's face tightened slightly. It was trash. If you enjoyed this chapter, please subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. We appreciate your support. A nervous hush fell over the room. I could see my mother's eyes narrow slightly, her brows furrowing in concern. Clara's fiancé, a kind-eyed man named Leo, put a reassuring hand on her arm, his smile a little forced. My heart pounded with a mix of adrenaline and a strange, hollow feeling. This was it. The moment I had been planning for. I looked at the crowd, my audience, their eyes fixed on me, waiting for the punchline. I took a deep breath, and the lies began to flow. Clara and I have always had this interesting dynamic, I began, my voice honeyed, my smile never wavering. She's always been the one to get what she wants. Remember the time she accidentally spilled red wine on my favorite white dress before prom? Oh, she was so sorry, I said, a little too loudly. But I still had to wear a dress that looked like a crime scene. A few people laughed, but the laughter was thin, strained. I continued, my voice gaining momentum, revealing another funny story, and then another. I talked about her failed attempts at baking, her tendency to borrow my things without asking, her innocent little fibs that always seemed to land me in trouble. The room grew colder with each word. I could see Clara's face pale, her knuckles turning white as she gripped Leo's hand. The smiles of our parents had vanished. They were looking at me with a mixture of confusion and disappointment, as if they were seeing a stranger. The air was thick with tension, a palpable unease spreading through the room like a virus. My cruel words hung in the air, unretractable and unforgivable. I saw my cousin Sarah shake her head slightly, her gaze full of a sadness that cut deeper than any anger could. I had expected a dramatic gasp, a confrontational outburst, but instead, I was met with silent judgment and quiet horror. My script was falling apart, the audience reacting in a way I had never anticipated. I was no longer a victor. I was an embarrassment. My speech was a well-timed, carefully crafted performance. I even added a mock crying moment, dabbing a tear from my eye as I talked about how special our bond was. The crowd was no longer laughing. They were exchanging uncomfortable glances, the celebratory mood replaced by a heavy silence. I had done it. I had successfully poisoned the air, turning a beautiful day into a cringe-worthy spectacle. I looked at Clara. Her eyes, once so full of light, were now clouded with hurt and confusion. I was expecting a reaction, a moment of anger, a public confrontation. But she just stared at me, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. Her silence was more devastating than any scream could have been. It was the silence of a broken trust, the quiet acknowledgement that the person she thought she could count on had just stabbed her in the back. When I finally finished, the applause was scattered and weak. I returned to my seat, a triumphant smirk playing on my lips. I had won, but the victory felt hollow. My parents didn't meet my gaze. My cousins avoided me. The only person who looked me in the eye was Leo. His expression was not one of anger, but of pity. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't humiliated Clara. I had humiliated myself. The delicious taste of victory I had anticipated was replaced by the bitter, metallic tang of shame. I felt a flush of heat crawl up my neck and across my cheeks. I wanted to disappear, to vanish into the gilded walls of the reception hall. My carefully constructed image of a clever, witty maid of honor had shattered, revealing the petty, vengeful girl underneath. The music started up again, but it felt like a hollow noise, a soundtrack to my public downfall. The rest of the night was a blur of forced smiles and awkward conversations. I was an outcast, a pariah at my own sister's wedding. People were whispering, their words a buzzing cloud around me. I could hear snippets of conversation. How could she do that? What a terrible thing to say. The triumph I had felt earlier was now a bitter taste in my mouth. I had expected to feel powerful, but I felt small, exposed, and utterly alone. My mother finally approached me, her face a mask of pained disappointment. "What was that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Clara is heartbroken. We are heartbroken." I tried to defend myself, to say it was just a joke, a fun twist. But the words felt empty and weak even to my own ears. She just shook her head and walked away, her shoulders slumped with sorrow. I watched Clara and Leo from a distance. He was holding her, whispering comforting words in her ear. She was still crying, her face buried in his shoulder. This was not the scene I had envisioned. I wanted her to be angry, to fight back. Instead, she was just sad. And her sadness was a far more potent weapon than my cruelty. I had tried to destroy her happiness, but I had only succeeded in destroying my own reputation and the last remnants of my family's trust. The victory I had so desperately sought now felt like the biggest loss of my life. I had burned every bridge, and I was left standing alone, watching the flames. The lavish decorations and joyful atmosphere of the wedding felt like a cruel mockery. I was a spectator to my own self-destruction, unable to stop the momentum of my own malice. I wanted to go to her, to apologize, to take it all back. But I couldn't. I was paralyzed by a shame so profound it felt like a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. I left early, slipping out the back door, the sound of laughter and music fading behind me. This is not the end of the story. Subscribe to the channel to find out what happens next. We're glad you're enjoying our content. The following days were a living nightmare. My phone, once filled with congratulatory messages, was now silent. My parents' calls went straight to voicemail. Clara and Leo had left for their honeymoon, a blessed escape from the wreckage I had created. I was left alone in the aftermath, the ghost of my cruel words haunting me at every turn. My perfect life, so carefully constructed, was crumbling. I went back to my apartment in San Francisco. The city that had once felt like my ally, now felt like a cold, lonely tomb. My business trip had been a lie, and the truth was slowly catching up with me. I had lost a major client, the same one I had used as my alibi, and my professional reputation was hanging by a thread. The dominoes of my deceit were falling one by one. I tried to reach out to my family, to my friends, to anyone who would listen, but my calls were not returned. My messages were left unread. I had isolated myself completely. The reality of my actions began to sink in, a cold, hard stone in the pit of my stomach. My jealousy had consumed me, turning me into a monster. And now I was paying the price. The person I had hurt the most was not Clara, but myself. I was a prisoner in my own life, trapped in a cage of my own making. The city outside my window, once a source of inspiration, now felt indifferent, its skyscrapers looming over me like stone-faced judges. I replayed the wedding scene in my mind over and over, each memory a fresh dose of agony. The look on Clara's face, the disappointment in my mother's eyes, the pity in Leo's. They were all burned into my memory, a constant reminder of my failure. I had won a battle, but lost the war. A week passed, and the silence from my family was deafening. I felt like I was living in a black and white movie, all the color drained from my world. One day, a small package arrived at my door. It was from my mother. Inside, there was no letter, no angry note, just a single item. The crumpled, torn-up pages of the original, loving speech Clara had written, the one she had entrusted to me. My hands trembled as I held the pieces of paper, the words still legible, a testament to her beautiful and now broken trust. I collapsed on the floor, the tears finally coming, a flood of grief and regret. It wasn't just about the speech. It was about a lifetime of jealousy, of trying to outshine her, of never being able to be genuinely happy for her. I had always seen her as a rival, but she had always seen me as her sister. I had been so focused on winning that I had forgotten what I was fighting for. The next few weeks were a blur of self-reflection and bitter realization. I sought professional help, a therapist I had always scoffed at, and began to unpack the deep-seated resentments and insecurities that had fueled my actions. I started to write letters to my family, not with excuses, but with honest apologies. I didn't expect them to be answered, but I had to try. I had to at least try to start rebuilding what I had so recklessly destroyed. The crumpled paper was a physical representation of my broken relationship with my sister. The words, so full of love and trust, were a mirror, showing me the ugly reflection of my own heart. I started therapy, a difficult and humbling process. My therapist, a patient, kind woman named Dr. Evans, helped me see that my jealousy was not about Clara, but about my own deep-seated fear of not being enough. She helped me understand that my rivalry with my sister was a coping mechanism, a way to deal with my own insecurities. I began to write, not just apologies, but a journal, a way to process my emotions and confront my demons. 6 months passed. The silence from my family was still there, a constant reminder of my betrayal. I had lost my job, and my apartment felt emptier than ever. The consequences of my actions were a heavy cloak I wore every day. One evening, a knock came at my door. I opened it to find my sister, Clara, standing on my doorstep. She wasn't smiling, but her eyes held a soft, sad understanding. "I read your letters," she said, her voice steady. "It will take a long time to forgive. Maybe we'll never be the same again." My heart sank, but I nodded, accepting her words. "But I'm here, because you're my sister, and because I can't let you fall apart alone." She stepped inside, and for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, the air in my apartment felt a little less cold. We talked for hours, the difficult, painful truths coming out, a slow, agonizing process of healing. I confessed my jealousy, my insecurities, and the deep-seated resentment that had driven me. She confessed her own struggles, her feelings of always living in my shadow, of never being good enough. We cried, we argued, and we finally, truly, saw each other for the first time. The reconciliation wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was just a beginning, a fragile, painful start to a new chapter. I had lost my perfect life, my perfect reputation, but in its place, I had found something more valuable, a chance at genuine connection and a hard-won lesson in empathy. The air was filled with the ghosts of our past, of childhood resentments and unspoken pains, but with each word, with each tear, we were laying those ghosts to rest. The healing process would be long, a journey of 1,000 small steps, but for the first time, I wasn't walking it alone. I had a long road ahead of me, a road to redemption, but I had my sister by my side, and for the first time in a long time, I had hope. The California sun, which had once felt so cruel, now seemed to shine a little brighter. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope this story moved you. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. Your support helps us tell more stories that matter. See you next time.